Hey, welcome back to our 1 John devotional. This is week 3, day 1, and as we kick off today, we have another memory verse for you. And this week's memory verse comes from 1 John chapter 1 and verse 5, which says, "This is the message we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." Again, our memory verse, repetition is the key to learning, right? Our memory verse is this. 1 John chapter 1 and verse 5. "This is the message we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." So as we step into our day 1 devotional, we're going to reflect on our memory verse. This is a bold statement that John makes about God in 1 John 1:5. When we read it, maybe at first we just move past it and it's just like, oh yeah, it makes sense, and we just breeze past it. But as we try to do on our day 1 devotional, we want to spend some time actually reading and reflecting on this verse, which is our memory verse, as we already mentioned. So we're going to read it again. And as we read, we want to actually take a moment to think about the words that are being said. What makes this such a bold claim? We've read it twice. We're going to read it a third time. Now, don't fast forward, don't skip ahead. I encourage you to actually listen again to this word. We're going to read it a little bit slower. 1 John chapter 1 and verse 5. "This is the message we have heard from him and proclaim to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." So as we read, what sticks out to you? What words or phrases or bold statements stick out to you as you read? Again, this verse makes a bold claim about God. So our question becomes out of this verse, how is your view of God impacted by what John says? Specifically that part where he says, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. The question is, how is your view of God impacted by what John writes there? Sometimes we come to the scriptures and we read something and we're like, really? Are you sure? Do I believe that? And we need to wrestle with what is there in the text. And we need to combine that wrestling with a surrender that, hey, I am not the wisest. I am not the smartest. I am not God. And so God does things different than I may understand. And some things that God does and some of the reasons why he does them may be hard for me to understand at first. And so as we look into these scriptures, we ask that question of really, there's no darkness at all in God. And I really enjoy reading from the Amplified translation. It gives some more clarity on what exactly John is saying here. And so we're going to read this verse again because we're reading and we're reflecting on it, we're meditating on it. It's important to read and reread for memorization as well. Now this is going to be a different translation, so bonus points if you memorize it in the Amplified version. But here's what it says. "This is the message of God's promised revelation, which we have heard from him and now announce to you, that God is light. He is holy. His message is truthful. He is perfect in righteousness. And in him there is no darkness at all, no sin, no wickedness, no imperfection." I love what it adds to our understanding of some of these words, that God is light and in him there is no darkness at all. The Amplified gives us a greater understanding of what is really being said, this bold claim that John is making. So again, as we wrap up our day 1 devotional, the question for you is, how again does this impact your view of God? How does it impact your perspective on things that happen in your life, both the good and the bad? Hey, thanks for joining us for day one in our week 3 1 John devotional. We look forward to gathering again together with you for our next day. Again, we encourage you to share this, to do this together with other people. If you're doing this alone, we encourage you to talk to somebody about what you're doing, the answers that you're writing down or that you're sharing. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.